On February 27, 2022, the Pokémon Company revealed the existence of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet during a Pokémon Presents livestream on Pokémon Day. The 9th generation of Pokémon games were showcased as the first fully open-world adventure entry, which was set in the Paldea region. The livestream demonstrated multiple new gameplay elements. The highlight of these new elements was the generational mechanic, the Terastal phenomenon. When the Terastal mechanic was revealed, it was enthusiastically received by the Pokémon player base with widespread excitement and anticipation. The Terastal mechanic enables a player to temporarily change their Pokémon's type to any of the 18 Pokémon types at any given time during a battle. Being able to freely change a Pokémon's type at will during battle had previously never been heard of, with the only exception being moves that change or override a Pokémon's type, such as the moves Soak, Magic Powder, Forest Curse, Trick or Treat, Burn Up, Reflect Type, or via Mega Evolution, a battle mechanic that was introduced in Generation 6. At the time of the creation of this video, there are currently only a total of 10 Pokemon that receive a type change in some way, shape, or form upon Mega Evolving. An interesting fact is that currently, Mega Aggron is the only Mega Pokemon that actually loses a type upon Mega Evolving, going from the dual Rock and Steel type to just the mono-type Steel. Now, how exactly does the Tera mechanic work? I'll give you a quick summary. A Pokemon's Tera type can be changed if you bring 50 Tera Shards of any Pokemon type to the Treasure Eatery in Medallion. When in battle, you simply select the Terastal button at any given time and then select the Pokemon's move that you wish to use. Your Pokemon will then either change its type completely or become one of the types that it previously was. You can only Terastallize once per battle, and all Terastal transformations are singularly typed, as no dual-type Terastal transformations currently exist. The Terastal mechanic also has an effect on a Pokemon's moves. If you use a move that matches the Tera type and the Pokemon's original type, that move gains a 2x attack multiplier. If the move's type doesn't match the original type but matches the Tera type, you will still receive a 1.5 boost. Additionally, any non-multi-hit moves that are under the base power of 60 that match the Tera type will be boosted up to a base power of 60. Lastly, the technical machine Tera Blast was also introduced in Generation 9. This is a normal type move with a base power of 80 that will change from the normal type to match the Tera type of a Pokemon if its user has Terastallized. This move is a special attack, but will change to be a physical attack under two conditions. 1. If its user is Terastallized, and 2. If its Terastallized user's physical attack stat is greater than its special attack stat. At first, many people were excited to use the Terastal mechanic because they thought that it would breathe new life into lesser used Pokemon and finally make them more viable. But that didn't happen. The Terastal mechanic simply made Pokemon that were already good even better. The mechanic pushed top performing Pokemon over the edge, especially now that they had access to Tera Blast, a move that could grant them coverage that they previously didn't have access to within their standard move pool. Now we'll discuss the main environment where the majority of player sentiment about the Terastal mechanic takes place. On Pokémon Showdown, a popular Pokémon battling simulator, a tiering system is utilized for the singles battle format. In this video, we will mainly be discussing two tiers, the Overused tier, which is standard play for many users, and the Ubers tier, which contains banned Pokemon that were deemed too strong and unhealthy for the OU tier. A third tier that we will also make reference to is the Underused tier, where Pokemon are placed when they don't receive enough usage to be placed in the Overused tier. There have been many bans in the OU tier throughout the duration of Generation 9, but there are a few Pokemon that users believe would not have been banned if it had not been for the Terastal mechanic. A few of these examples are Pokemon such as Gouging Fire, Archaludon, Terapagos, Sneasler, Ursaluna Blood Moon, Ogerpon Hearthflame, Volcarona, Espathra, Annihilate, Regieleki, and notably Roaring Moon and Baxcalibur, who both dropped from overused to underused and then were both later banned to Ubers. Regieleki is an especially noteworthy case of the Terastal mechanic pushing Pokemon over the edge into brokenness. This is because Regieleki is a purely electric type Pokemon with access to only normal and electric type attacking moves, one special rock type attacking move in the form of Ancient Power, and one physical flying type attacking move in the form of Acrobatics. In regular scenarios, this is not very good coverage as Regieleki is completely walled by ground types and is unable to do any meaningful damage against them. However, combined with its blistering base speed stat of 200 along with access to Terastallization and Tera Blast, not only can Regieleki now hit ground types super effectively with Tera Blast Water or Tera Blast Ice, it can even Terastallize into a grass type to resist incoming would-be super effective ground type moves and strike back with Tera Blast Grass for super effective damage. Although Regieleki has been banned to the Ubers tier, it is still held back by its poor defenses and move pool, so it doesn't see much usage, aside from occasionally being used as a rapid spinner. Now, we'll discuss why so many Pokemon players hate the Terastal mechanic. When most people Terastallize, they Terastallize for defensive reasons rather than offensive reasons, and this affects the mileage of Pokemon in general. Let me explain to you what the term mileage means in the Pokemon sense. Mileage is the amount of progress that a Pokemon makes for the duration of its time in a battle. For the majority of Pokemon's history, the concept and structure of mileage had remained largely untampered with, as it is a core fundamental of Pokemon battles. However, the Terastal mechanic interferes with this aspect. For example, say there are two Pokemon on the field. One is a fire type and the other is a grass type. The person who owns the fire type Pokemon has no other Pokemon on their team that can battle, but the person who owns the grass type on the field also has a steel type and an ice type on their team that can battle. The person who owns the grass type Pokemon has the numbers advantage, but the person who owns the fire type Pokemon has the type advantage. Provided that the fire type Pokemon outspeeds the remaining 3 Pokemon on the opponent's team, and that its attacks are strong enough to one-shot the remaining Pokemon due to its type advantage, the concept of mileage demonstrates that the fire type Pokemon will demonstrate enough progress to win its trainer the battle. However, with Terastallization in play, the opposing trainer can simply Terastallize their grass type into a water type to resist the oncoming fire type move, and then KO back with Tera Blast Water. Alongside this, the main issue that players have with the Tera mechanic is its unpredictability. Most Pokemon do have common Tera types that they typically run, but realistically, anyone can run any of the 18 Tera types whenever they choose, regardless of common trends. Due to this level of unpredictability, even the official Pokemon company recognized that there should be a level of transparency when using this mechanic. This led to them mandating open team sheets in their officials doubles battling format, which is known as VGC. Open team sheets reveal information about the Pokemon on the trainer's teams, which are their movesets, items, and Tera type. Now, some Pokemon players from the singles meta on Pokemon Showdown also wished for a similar level of transparency. Some players wanted the mechanic outright banned, and others wanted a Tera preview, which would only reveal the Tera types of all the Pokemon that would be participating in the battle. But the OU tier/moderator refused. Some players even requested that a separate OU ladder be made where Tera would be banned. This way, individuals who enjoyed using the mechanic could play with it normally on one ladder, while individuals who disliked the mechanic could play without it on a separate ladder. However, this split ladder request was shot down under the guise of split ladders being historically bad. The prime example used for this argument against split ladders was a split ladder that was tested back in Generation 5, where a single move rather than a battle mechanic was banned. This ladder was known as the infamous No Scald ladder, and it banned the move Scald, a new 80 base power water type move with a 30% chance to burn. The concept of basing future split ladder decisions off of such a preposterous, silly, and failed experiment of the past was so ridiculous that many players realized that there was no reasoning with the moderators of the OU tier, and that there was really only one option left on the table, to try to ban the mechanic. The OU Council conducted a suspect test on the Tera mechanic, which allowed qualified players to vote on whether or not the mechanic should remain legal or be banned. The vote required 60% of qualified players to vote ban on the mechanic in order for action to be taken. The suspect test ended with a suspicious number of 59.25% of players voting ban, meaning that only 41.75% of qualified players voted do not ban. Many players were suspicious with the outcome of this suspect test, with some stating that a 51% majority should be all that is needed to decide whether or not a decision is made. Others argue that the minority should not represent the majority. Some even speculated that there was voter fraud occurring behind the scenes, which is what we had seen happen with the Cream suspect test. Ultimately, a second Terra suspect test was never held again despite many players requesting one. Ironically, there were multiple suspect tests held for the same Pokemon, such as Cream and Gouging Fire, but Terra never received a second suspect test. And then on February 18, 2025, the OU tier leader randomly closed off the option to ever suspect the Terra mechanic again, and then randomly dropped this banger of a video.
Terastallization will remain legal in Generation 9. When Terra was announced for Gen 9, players' first reaction was, how can this possibly be balanced? Offensive sweepers powering up to 2 times power or switching types to avoid a weakness threatened to take over the metagame before it even began.
The title of this video stated that Terra will never be banned, and the TLDR version of the OU leader's reasoning is basically, yeah, there are 18 different types, but you need to memorize every type that Pokemon typically run and prepare for the Terra. This video was received negatively by the majority of the Pokemon community, with most of the comments condemning the OU tier leader's random decision. Individuals took to Twitter once again to vent their frustration about the mechanic and how it took little skill to abuse and that it was still largely uncompetitive. Due to this decision, many players stopped playing the Gen 9 OU tier entirely, while others announced their permanent migration to the National Dex tier, which had already banned the Terra mechanic. The Nat Dex tier has mons such as Terapagos, Regieleki, and Volcarona available for use, which is further proof that the Terra mechanic caused Pokemon that would otherwise be legal in the OU tier to be banned to Ubers. It is also interesting to note that the leader of the OU tier, upon being told by players that they were abandoning Gen 9 OU to go play Nat Dex, responded to a comment about Dynamax with, Nat Dex is an unofficial tier. My guy, what are we doing? The entirety of Pokemon Showdown and Smogon is an unofficial tier. There's no need to talk down about somebody else's metagame simply because players prefer to yours. Lastly, the final telling aspect of Terra being a broken mechanic is the fact that for previous generations, the Smogon strategy decks always had a section dedicated to checks and counters for Pokemon underneath their viable movesets. However, there are 0 checks and counters sections written for any of the Pokemon in Generation 9. This is because the concept of Terra explicitly breaks the fundamentals of checks and counters. There cannot be a defined check or counter to something if it can decide what it does and does not want to be checked or countered by at the flip of a switch. Having this section would simply expose the hypocrisy in the OU moderator's belief that Terra is a balanced mechanic, since individuals would attempt to take advice from the section and build their teams around said advice, and then be scratching their heads in confusion when the information from the checks and counters section did not hold true. In conclusion, players do not like the Terastal mechanic because they find it cheap, skill-less, and easy to abuse, with the element of surprise being the cherry on top. One player likened the individuals who defended the Terra mechanic to be similar to the players who were upset that No Team Preview was abolished with the start of Generation 5. No Team Preview, similar to Terastallization, held the element of surprise, and it was a factor that gave some individuals the edge in battles rather than being skilled. Players have been stuck with Generation 9 and the Terastal mechanic for 3 long years, which is why so many players are highly anticipating the release of Pokemon Champions, who have explicitly stated that Mega Evolution will be the first and only mechanic of the battle season. Although the Terra mechanic will make a reappearance in the distant future, many players are currently experiencing Terra fatigue and are glad to finally be able to put Terastallization behind them for a long time. What do you think about the Terra mechanic? Do you think that it should have been banned or regulated in some way similar to how VGC had handled it? Please, do comment your thoughts and opinions below, and share the video with a friend if you've had this discussion before. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as it helps out smaller creator channels such as mine. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.